Hi everybody, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are staying safe indoors, away from other people. Um, I know some of you are probably enjoying this time being at home, being able to just lounge around all day, although some of you are probably kind of hating it by now. Those of you that just love being outside, love seeing other people, you're probably hating this. So hopefully you guys are still staying safe though, and staying away from other people, staying away from all that nasty sickness going around. Um, Hopefully I'll be able to see you guys here in a couple weeks. I've had a couple people ask questions about that Unit 5 test. Some scores, there was a lot of really good scores on that test, but there was also some not so good scores, and I know some of you have gotten off to kind of a rough start to this quarter, mainly because of that Unit 5 test. I have kind of changed stances on that. I made an announcement in Canvas, this was Monday, that if you would like to make corrections on the Unit 5 test, you may do so. What I want you to do is go into your quiz or into your test. Now I know some of you have taken it multiple times for some reason. I never said that you could take it multiple times, so you're going to need to go into your very first attempt. If you've taken it multiple times, go into your first attempt, and I want you to make corrections on the ones that you missed. Okay? Make sure to show all your work. Now you can do this on a piece of paper and then maybe kind of take a picture of all your work and email that to me. Or if you want to type up an email, show all your work in an email, do all your corrections in an email, you can send that to me also. I'll look through them. If you get them correct, if I see all your work is satisfactory, then I'll give you partial credit on the ones that you missed back towards points on the test, which should help boost your grade up quite a bit. Okay? So that's one thing that you can do to help get your grade up. Make sure you guys are also staying on top of getting your homework done and watching these videos. Okay? And if you have any questions over anything, remember, don't hesitate to send me an email. I'm here to help. Okay? This is what I'm here for. I have nothing to do really while I'm at home if you guys aren't asking questions, things like that. So I am here to help you guys. I would love to help you guys through anything you're struggling with. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and get started with the lesson. This is the second lesson of this module, and actually this module only has 2 lessons. So after this lesson, we're actually going to start our review, and then next week we're going to take a quiz over this module right away. So I know this seemed kind of quick, but there's only 2 lessons in this module, and then the next module, Module 15, is our very last module of the whole year, and then we're done. Which seems kind of crazy to be almost done already, but yeah. So today we are going to, so we talked about trend lines and scatter plots in Monday's lesson. Okay, today we're going to use a trend line to make a prediction from a scatter plot. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with the first Explore activity. So drawing a trend line. When a scatter plot shows a linear association, so that means the association is positive, remember? It needs to be in mostly go in a straight line, not perfectly a straight line, because very rarely in real life is your data going to fall straight perfectly on a straight line. Sometimes it will, but not always. Okay, but when a scatter plot shows a linear straight line association, you can use a line to model the relationship between the variables. A trend line, this might be a good vocab word to jot down in your notes. A trend line is a straight line that comes closest to the points in a scatter plot. Okay, so basically it's just as it says. It shows the trend of what's happening in your scatter plot. Okay, so here it says Joyce is training for a 10K race. By the way, those of you that run, how far is 10K? I'm not a runner whatsoever. I have no idea how far 10K is. So like maybe those of you that are in track or cross country, feel free to send me an email and let me know how far 10K is, because I have no idea. Okay, Joyce is training for a 10K race though. For some of her training runs, she records the distance she ran and how many minutes she ran. Okay, so first it says make a scatter plot of Joyce's running data. So this is something that we kind of did on Monday. What we're going to do, here's our data right here up in this graph. We're going to take this data now and we're going to plot each point on the graph. So we're going to start here, a distance of 4 miles, it took her 34 minutes. So 4, 34, our first point is going to be right here. Next one, 2 miles she ran in 25 minutes. So that point needs to go right here. For 1 mile it took 7 minutes. So that point should go right about here. 2 miles in 16 minutes. That point goes right here. Sorry, it's hard to make a little point there. 3 miles in 26 minutes. So 3 miles in 26 minutes, right there-ish. 5 miles in 55. That goes way up here. 2 miles in 20 minutes. That goes right here. 4 miles in 45 minutes, which is right here. And then 3 miles in 31 minutes. That goes right here. Now, part B says to draw a trend line, use a straight edge to draw a line that has about the same number of points above and below it. Now, unfortunately, I do not have a straight line ability to draw on this PowerPoint. So I'm just going to kind of freehand this as best as I possibly can. Now, to start, I'm going to start at the origin, right? Because if she's running 0 miles, how long do you think it takes her to run 0 miles? Well, 0, right? It doesn't take her any time at all to run 0 miles, right? So we're going to start here at the origin. And we're going to draw a line that kind of goes through the middle of this data. So basically, I want to try and get, like, if possible, the same amount of dots above the line as below the line, and kind of draw it right in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just draw this maybe like this right here. I think that line looks pretty close to being right about in the middle. Okay? All right, so part C here says use your trend line to predict how long it would take Joyce to run 4.5 miles. So I want 4.5 miles. I want to use this line now to make a prediction how long it's going to take her to run 4.5 miles. Well, 4.5 miles is right here, right? So if I take this and I go up to where the line is at for 4.5, we can see it's right about here. This point right here corresponds to about 45 minutes. So we can predict that it takes about 45 minutes, or it will take approximately 45 minutes for her to run 4.5 miles. Okay, so that's one way that we can use this trend line to make a prediction. Okay, based on the trend that's happening, we can use that trend to make a prediction about the future. Okay. Next, it says how well does your trend line fit the data? Well, but when it says how well does it fit the data, basically that means like how close does that line represents the points that are shown on the graph? Well, I would say that these points are all fairly close. Like I wouldn't say that there's really any outliers in this. So I would say, yeah, this fits pretty close to the data. Like it's a pretty tight fit. Okay. Number 2 then says, do you think you can use a scatter plot that shows no association to make a prediction? So if you guys remember, what does it mean for a scatter plot to have no association? If it's going to have no association, basically that means the points are all over on the graph, right? So the points are just kind of spread out. There's no pattern to them at all. So do you think if there's no pattern or no structure to these points that we can use that to make a prediction? No. We can't draw a trend line to represent that. There's no way to use the scatter plot with no association to make a prediction like we just did. Okay? All right, next we want to find the equation of a trend line here. So you can use, as long as you have a trend line where you have 2 visible points that you can use, you should be able to make an equation for that trend line. Okay? So this scatter plot and trend line show the relationship between the number of chapters and the total number of pages for several books. Write an equation for the trend line. Okay? So step 1 is to find the slope of the trend line, right? So remember, to write an equation, it's y equals mx plus b. M, you guys remember what m is? M is the slope, and then b, that's our y-intercept. Okay, so it might be a good idea to write that down back in your notes, because some of you might have forgotten it and you might have lost that in your notes as well. Okay, it might be a good idea to write that in your notes and label m is your slope. Okay, b is your y-intercept. Okay, hopefully you have better handwriting than I have mousemanship, because I am struggling to write with my mouse. Okay, hopefully you can still read my writing though. All right, so we want to be able to write an equation to represent this trend line right here. So first thing we want to do is we want to find the slope of the line. So we want to find 2 points that this line crosses. Okay, you can see it crosses here at the origin, so that would be a point we could use. We can also see it crosses right here. Okay, so this would probably be a point. There's a bunch of different points actually that this crosses through. Crosses here, crosses here, crosses here, here, here. There's lots of different points we could use. It says this line passes through the points 550 and 17,170. Now another thing that might be helpful for you to write in your notes is how to find slope. Remember, slope, that's x2 minus x1. Sorry, I already messed that up. Hang on, let me erase this. Remember, the y's always go on top, the x's are on the bottom. So y2 minus y1 over x2. Running out of room. x2 minus x1. Okay. So first, let's say this is point 1 and this is point 2. y2 minus y1, I want 170 minus 50. Well, 170 minus 50, that's 120. And then x2 minus x1, 17 minus 5 is 12. Okay. Then we want 120 divided by 12. Well, 120 divided by 12 is 10, which gives us a slope of 10. Okay? All right, now step 2 is to find the y-intercept of the trend line. Now remember, the y-intercept is the point on the y-axis. Here's our y-axis right here. Okay, we want to find the point where this line crosses the y-axis. Well, you can see it crosses right here at the origin. So our y-intercept is just 0. Okay? And then last, it says use your slope and y-intercept values to write the equation. So remember, again, y equals mx plus b. That's our formula for slope-intercept. Okay? Y equals is what we always start with. Our m is going to be our slope. Remember, if we go back, we said our slope is 10. So we're going to plug 10 in for m. Our x stays the same. Our y-intercept we said is 0. It's at the origin, so that means I don't need to include anything at the end. Our equation is just y equals 10x. Okay? So the equation of our trend line here is y equals 10x. We can use this equation now to make predictions about anything, about any number of chapters that we want. So let's say we wanted to predict how many pages there would be in 20 chapters. Well, 20 chapters isn't on this graph anywhere. 20 chapters would be, actually let's say 30 chapters. 30 chapters would be like way over here somewhere. Okay, but what we could do is we could take 30 and plug it in for x. So do 10 times 30 and we would get our answer, how many pages we would expect. All right. All right, number 3 says, what type of association does this scatter plot show? You guys remember on Monday we talked about this. When the line is going up from left to right, that shows a positive association, and it is a straight line. So it is positive, and it's a linear association as well. So positive and linear. Number 4, what's the meaning of the slope in this situation? Basically, the slope in this situation, we're talking about pages in relation to number of chapters. So in this case, the slope is telling us how many pages there would be per chapter, basically. So the number of pages per chapter. That's another bad thing about writing with a mouse is it takes forever to write with a mouse too. Per chapter. Okay. What is the meaning of the y-intercept? So right here's our y-intercept. What do you think this tells us about this data? Okay, our y-intercept is at 0, which means obviously for 0 pages for 0 chapters, that means there's going to be 0 pages, right? There's 0 pages if there's no chapters, right? That's what the y-intercept tells you in this situation. Okay, you can't have pages if there's no chapters. Okay. All right. What I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and try this one on your own here. Okay. It says the scatter plot and trend line show the relationship between the number of rainy days in a month and the number of umbrellas sold each month. Write an equation for the trend line. So you're going to take this line right here, and I want you to write an equation to represent this line. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and do it now. Okay, so hopefully you took some time to work through that. If you haven't done it yet, please pause it and do it now. Okay, don't cheat yourself out of doing this, because you will see problems like this on your homework. You will see problems like this on the test. So make sure you're taking the time to actually find the equation for this trend line. Okay, so here we've got this trend line. We want to first, remember, our equation y equals mx plus b. First, we want to find our slope. So we want to pick 2 points. First point I'll pick, might as well just pick the origin. We can see it goes through the origin right there. Now we want to find another point that it goes through, and I can see it goes through right up here, this point right there. So this is 0, 0 is my first point. My second point is at 10, and this point is what, 9? So 10, 9. Okay. So to find your slope, we want y2 minus y1 first. So 9 minus 0 is 9 over x2 minus x1. So 10 minus 9, that's 10. 9 divided by 10, you could leave it as 9 over 10, or if you wanted to make a decimal, you could make it 0.9. Okay, so we're going to start this with y equals 0.9x, or you could make it y equals 9 over 10x, and then we want our y-intercept as well. Well, we can see our y-intercept is 0, so we're just going to leave it like this. You could have either of these equations would work. Y equals 0.9x or y equals 9/10 x would work. Okay, so hopefully you did that. You were able to get that just fine. All right, next thing. Making predictions. When you use a trend line or its equation to predict a value between data points that you already know, we call that interpolation. Okay, to predict the value. So if it's in the data that we can see on the graph, it's called interpolation. Think inside the graph, think inter. Okay? When you make a prediction that's outside the data you know, you extrapolate the predicted value. So think extrapolate extra is outside the data. It's not something that you can visibly see on the graph. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. All right, so it says use the equation of the trend line in example 1 to predict how many pages would be in a book with 26 chapters. So we kind of just talked about this a little bit ago, right? We want to make a prediction about how many pages would be in a book with 26 chapters. So it says first, is this a prediction, an example of interpolation or extrapolation? Well, if we look at our graph over here on the right, the highest number it goes to here is, let's see, this is 18. We're going up by 2s here, so this would be 20 right here, this line. So since 26 is higher than 20, it's outside of the data range. It's extra, right? So this is actually this is extrapolation. Okay, so this is an example of extrapolation. So in order to make a prediction about a chapter book with 26 chapters, we're going to use our equation. So we're going to start with the equation of the line. We came up with that and we said it was y equals 10x, right? What we want to do now is we want to substitute the number of chapters in for x. Well, if there's 26 chapters that we want to make a prediction for, we're going to substitute that in. So we're going to do 10 times 26. 10 times 26 is 260. So we can make a prediction that a book with 26 chapters will have 260 pages in it. Okay? So that's how you can use an equation to make a prediction about something that you don't yet know. Okay? Let's say there was 40 chapters. Okay? In that case, you're going to plug 40 in for x, so 10 times 40, we could predict that there would be about 400 pages in that book. Okay? All right, make a prediction. Predict how many pages would be in a book with 14 chapters. Is this an example of interpolation or extrapolation? Well, 14 chapters is inside the data range. We can see visibly on this graph right here, 14 chapters. So all we would need to do here is go take 14, go up to the line and see where it crosses, where we can see there would be about 14 pages. Now, sometimes it's hard to eyeball it. So if you want, you could still use this equation right here. You could still take 14 and plug it in for x. 10 times 14 is 140. So we would say there'd be about, we could predict there'd be about 140 pages in that book. And then number 8, do you think that extrapolation or interpolation is more accurate? Explain. I think as long as you have the equation, they're equally accurate. Now, you could possibly argue that interpolation could be more accurate because you have the line also to compare with your answer with. So in a way, you could say interpolation is more accurate just because, let's say you want to know 10 chapters. You take 10 times 10, you get 100. You could then match that up and see for yourself on the grid if that's accurate, right? Extrapolation, you don't have that ability, right? You can't go over to 40 chapters and see if it matches up on the graph, because it's not shown, right? So in a way, you could probably say that interpolation is more accurate. Okay? All right, so that's all we have for today. Your assignment is the 14.2 homework on your HRW. Also remember, if you have any quiz corrections, Unit 5 test corrections that you want to make, go ahead and get those done now. Get those emailed to me. I will check those right away and give you feedback. If you have any questions over today's lesson, make sure you email me with those questions as well, or questions about anything, about life in general, anything that you want to talk to me about. I miss you guys, and I'm anxious to hear from you. So if you guys have anything for me, any questions, any comments, any stories about what's happening in your life, I'd love to hear them. All right, so have a good day. Continue to stay safe, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. Bye.